Welcome to the Big Freaking Change podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of those who took bold action, embraced uncertainty, and transformed their lives without ever feeling ready. I'm your host, Cara Moeller Poppitt, author of The Big Freaking Change and the creator of the Get Unstuck Cycle of Change model. Each week, we'll sit down with remarkable individuals who have taken bold steps in their lives, personally and professionally, to make meaningful change. Whether you're seeking a career shift, personal growth, or a boost in confidence, our goal is to inspire you to stop waiting and start taking action.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, Big Freaking Change. I'm your host, Cara Moeller Poppitt, and I'm delighted to be here. This is an extra special episode, you guys, with my soul. My sister is in the house. Jenna, welcome to our show. Jenna, I wanted to officially welcome you not only as my sister, my best friend, my guide, my guardian angel, my therapist. I mean, everything you are. But what people might not know is we are one person in two bodies.
That's right.
But for those of you that don't know Jenna, I want to do her formal introduction because she is just so brilliant, so passionate, so well-rounded, and she serves a very unique market. Jenna is the owner of Guardian Estate Company, Canada's first estate brokerage firm connecting clients to professional executors and trustees. She has a passion for ensuring Canadians have the right information to make informed decisions for their estate plan. She sits on the local board of the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners and enjoys time with her young family in Calgary, Canada. And she also happens to be my sister. So warm welcome to the show, Jenna.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I have to say, it's seeing our faces side by side. We look so similar and talk the same. So if our listeners can't hear who's speaking, then, they just have to watch, right?
That's right. So Jenna, we are talking about big freaking change. And I know that you went through a big freaking change, switching from employee at a very promising bank and corporate career onto the entrepreneurial journey. I'd love for you to start with sharing your story about that.
Absolutely. Well, that was about 3.5 years ago, which seems so long ago, but also not very long in the same time. I was doing really well in my career, excelling, loved it, great job. But I knew that I needed something different. There was something inside of me that said, you could do something else. You could do more. So, lots of conversations with you, to be honest, but I did really think about my next step. It was a year after my first daughter was born, and just going through the change of motherhood also was a big freaking change as well. But I really, was prepared for making change, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't feel ready.
Mm-hmm.
And I was waiting for that point where someone would say, go for it. But then I realized that it has to come from inside. So after discussions with you and discussions with my husband, I decided to take the leap and quit my job to start Guardian Estate Company. And it's been a wild journey, lots of ups and downs, but I'm so happy I did it. It's very rewarding, and I have no regrets.
I love that. Jenna, you talked about motherhood, and it's so important that we touch on that, you made this change for your life, for your family, and also the change of going into motherhood is massive. And I think a lot of women don't realize how massive it is. We have stress on ourselves that after we have a baby, we're going to bounce back to our physical form. Mentally and emotionally, we've completely evolved and shifted. Now we're responsible for another human or multiple humans. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough recognition for the change and acknowledgement of the actual process. Overnight, you change in from an individual that's pregnant to a mom, and that shift in identity is forever. Talk to me about that shift for you.
Definitely not something that I knew how I knew it would feel like until you're in those shoes as a mother. I it totally changed my perspective, totally changed my world. You're no longer thinking about yourself, you're thinking about your family and growing these tiny humans into people. So your priorities change. And as a result, your goals may also change. And that was one of the changes that I felt inside, that I wanted to create a life that was a good balance for my family, but also motivated me to do the best that I can and strive to reach my potential.
And it's a hard balance, right? And I think so many people wait to feel ready even to become a mom. Like, when will you know you're ready to be a mom? It's like, you don't know you're ready.
You don't know.
You just go, and then you're like, whoa, I wasn't ready. I thought I was. Or moving from one child to two, and in my case, three, every time it changes your dynamic. Jenna, talk to me about kind of the mental and emotional thoughts that went through your mind when you're stepping out from, a safe environment where your job, you work 9 to 5, you're rocking it in the corporate world. There's a great, plan of progress, but you inside internally had to listen to your calling and your knowing and your intuition that, you're going to set out for the entrepreneurial world. I think that most people go that route where they have a job and they just realize there's something more, like you mentioned. But talk to me about, it's not just easy as like, okay, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start my business. Talk to me about maybe the pain of making that decision and what went through your mind.
One thing that was a really big thought for me was the thought of regret.
Yes.
I didn't want to regret not doing something because I was scared. And that for me was bigger than the regret or than the fear of failure, because I didn't want to live my life in a state of wishing that I had done something different. So that was one component. The other component that really held me back on the flip side was, what if I fail and what if I don't make money? Because we have a young family, I want the best for them, and going from a stable career with good income to literally zero the next day, it was definitely something to think about. But when I really sat down and pondered this question, I thought of the worst case scenario. Okay, what's the worst case scenario? One is I don't succeed in my business. We don't make money for a few years while I'm trying. And then I go back to a job which I know the industry is growing and I know I can find something in the market. So if that's the worst case scenario, I thought it was worth to take a chance. I would always regret not taking that chance, because that I could stomach and that I could believe I could overcome if I had that worst case scenario come true.
I really appreciate that comment. And I think it's so common for most people to always think about the worst case scenario. And in my book, I talk about, what if we talk about the best case scenario? Like, why don't we, acknowledge the worst case, but don't stay there and actually get excited for the possibilities. So I always say, we focus on the problems, but we got to focus on the possibilities.
That's so true. And I will say I did not think of the best case scenario.
Most people don't.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. And we live in the fear of failure. And, I want to talk about a failure that me and you had.
Yes.
When we started a company and then COVID happened. So my sister and I started a company called Update. And essentially it was to create unique, innovative ways for couples to connect on these beautifully planned dates that would get them outside of their comfort zone. It was cards to foster connection, communication, and really have fun. So we were all in. We pitched to TELUS for this award. We did videos. We were like, yeah. I sponsored my a 12-year reunion at St. Francis, gave everyone a package, was stamping these cards the night before. My sister was like, this is crazy. And, sponsored it at my year-end show. Everyone got an update. We thought this was the most brilliant idea. And I think it really was. And then COVID happened and no one was going out. So we experienced failure. And I still feel like I'm happy I did it, because I don't have the regret, like you mentioned, fear of failure versus regret. And also we had to cut our losses and move forward, right? Learning that even if you fail, it's okay. And this wasn't our fault. This was wrong time, right product, right service, wrong time. But I actually kind of laugh at that failure, because it was it was so passionate. We were having so much fun. And then it was like, there's no market, no one's going out. Did it impact you at all, like on the because that was your first entrepreneurial journey?
It was. You know what? No, it didn't deter me from trying something new, because I feel like with each failure, you learn something. And being pushed out of our comfort zones, maybe not your comfort zone, but my comfort zone of being on camera and applying to these, awards, trying to get customers. I remember us the night before we had to deliver all these gift baskets to a big client. Yes. We were wrapping with cellophane in your living room, trying to do it late at night. And that's all those memories that we remember. Those are the moments of our lives. We won't remember sitting at a desk doing the mundane. We'll remember those crazy times where we tried something new and we're wild.
Yeah, we landed a huge client, and they called and said like, "Oh, do you offer gift baskets?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem. We can do gift baskets." I call my sister, I'm like, "We got to do 20 gift baskets and we're going to put an update in all of them. And we got to have this done in like 3 days." We like make it happen. And I think that's part of making shifts and changes in your life, right? Like our business model was not gift baskets, but I'm like, why not? Like, let's throw it in there, and you evolve and change. So that's a great memory. Jenna, let's talk about your business, what it does. And, it's very, very important. And it's even making the change to go, okay, I'm going to start an industry. I'm going to start a service that's never been started. That's a big freaking change. Talk to me about your business. Talk to me about the mindset, the idea. And then I also want to kind of understand what goes through families' minds when they're going through death.
So the idea for the business really came during my time working as a professional executor with one of the large institutions here in Canada. Over 11 years, I had personally administered over 100 estates when individuals had passed away. And I realized that the bulk of Canadians have not planned properly, for one. And two, lots of people didn't realize that you can hire out professional executors. You didn't have to appoint a family member or a friend to act as your executor in your estate. So I knew that there was a market for helping families navigate the different decisions available to them. I always say that professional executors are the trust industry's best kept secret because it's really hard to find them, how to compare the options, how to negotiate, and know what option to choose. So that's the idea. It really sparked during my time. And because it was so novel and new, I knew I needed to try it because it hadn't been done before. And I wanted to see what would happen if I went for it. So launched 3.5 years ago. And that's exactly what we do is we help families choose the best option in the marketplace for their unique needs. And some families, have different complexities. Maybe they have assets overseas or beneficiaries with special needs, or even just complex estates in general that they need specialized executors to manage. And we've been doing well. The first year or two, it's all about marketing and getting your name out there. But now that the word is out there, more and more clients are seeking this option to guide them through the journey.
It's wonderful that you identified a niche in a market and then you created a business to serve people. I think a lot of entrepreneurs can get stuck in the decision-making process and kind of second guess, like, is this really good? Why hasn't it been done before? Talk to me about that.
It's true. I mean, you don't really know if something's going to work until you try it. But one of the good things is that this industry is growing. People need this type of advice because of the great wealth transfer that's upon us. Baby boomers are passing away and passing their wealth on to the next generation. And so the need is there. But the idea within this industry was new for sure. So, I remember talking to Dad about it. And of course, Dad's a business person and very serious, logical man. And I said, Dad, do you think this will work? And he said, well, you won't know unless you try. So that's it's so true that you won't know unless you try. So just taking those first steps and putting the service out there and talking to professionals within the industry, if they thought that this would be a good idea, gave me confidence in going for it and creating this service for Canadians. And even in our conversations, Cara, one of my greatest fears was not making money. And you said, I remember this. You said, Jenna, the money will flow. And for someone to just say that and dissolve that fear, whether or not you believed it, but you're always so supportive and motivating. So to have that support and knowing that you had gave me the confidence to go for it.
That's so good. I'm glad I could help you in that way, because you helped me so much. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, right? Like, I'm glad Dad said, go try because you won't know. I'm glad he didn't say, oh boy, 'cause sometimes we tell him our ideas and he's like, oh boy. And that's all he says, right? And I think it's so true for any entrepreneur. You have an idea, you want to try, you don't know if you're going to fail, you don't know if it's going to take a long time. And the unfolding of the learning is the gold, right? Like, now you know more. And so now you're going to take on bigger risks. And the more risks you take, the more endurance, the more able you're able to take on these risks and expand to new markets or do bigger or bolder things. And that's really because confidence comes through action. And most entrepreneurs will wait to feel ready, wait till have everything perfect. And it just doesn't exist. And no life is perfect. Entrepreneurship is hard. It is super hard, and it can be rewarding and creative and fun. What would be your best advice for entrepreneurs or someone that was, a corporate, very comfortable life who had a knowing, wanted more, maybe felt a little stuck in their job, to take that leap? What would you say to them?
I would say, think about when you're 80 and you're sitting on your couch and reading a book. What will you regret in life? If this is one of the regrets that you will have of not taking that chance on yourself, then you need to take it.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is to be consistent. They always, I listen to so many podcasts about consistency and how that's so important for success, but it's so true. I expected my business to be super successful within a year, and it takes so much longer than that. So just being consistent and not getting discouraged if things don't happen as quickly as you expect will build up a better base for success in the future. And number 3 is just being comfortable with the thought that you could fail and the worst case scenario. Because if you're comfortable with that, then you have nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the regret. And in my book, I talk about most people on their deathbed, and there's all these studies that will say, what is their biggest regret? And they regret not being more of themselves and listening to their voice, their intuition, their calling, their divine, their God, whatever that may be. And that is the biggest fear that people have is living with regret. So it is important to follow, your path and try and expand. And I remember I was in a course writing my keynote, and our professor said to us, people were like in tears because they had to start again and it wasn't good enough. And I was in tears like so many times. I'm like, I don't know if I could do this. And I just like kept going. And I was probably the weakest link, but I had endurance. Like I could just see the end result. And he said, you didn't waste that 60 hours making this keynote. It was discovering the gold. And when you pivot or when you try something new or when you redo a draft, you get deeper, you get more refined, you get more clarity. And that's really a gift for all entrepreneurs. It's in the digging, right, that we find the brilliance. Jenna, I wanted to talk a little bit about what goes through, because this is, everyone knows we're going to die. Everybody knows that this is a part of life. And so many people don't have a will in place. They haven't made these hard decisions. They haven't talked about it, myself included, right? Like I know it's something I have to tighten up and it's on my list, but I never really make it a priority. What would you say to us, me included? And what happens to the families psychologically when there's a death in the family?
to your first question, I will say one of the motivating factors in getting your affairs in order is that this change of a death in the family or your own death is the most significant change that anyone will ever feel within your circle. Right. And so if people aren't planning for the most significant change in their life, as well as the lives of their loved ones, what are they planning for? So that's a motivating factor. Get your shit in order.
Get me deep, sister. That's motivating. Yeah, like I would never have thought of that. It's the most significant change in your life. Yes, it is.
So you need to plan for it. If you don't plan, your family is left with several questions unanswered that they can no longer ask because you're no longer there. And it can actually create more conflict within your beneficiary network. It can create more conflict within your estate, and it could decrease the value of what your beneficiaries receive by not having a proper plan in place. I know it's scary thinking about death. Lots of people don't even want to go there, especially when they're young. But God forbid something terrible happens, it's much better to have a proper plan in place that takes care of the people you love. So that's one thing. And with respect to the change families go through, I mean, this is the most significant change they'll feel. And often it's the parent who passes away, and the parent is the glue of the family network. Yeah. And so if a family is sort of falling apart because the glue is gone, there's nothing holding them together. So it's important to talk to your family members about your plans before you pass. Tell them why you're doing what you're doing. If you are gifting your funds to charity, talk to them about it. Talk to them about who you'd like to choose as an executor. Tell them your plans. You don't necessarily need to give them information of what you have, but just in general terms, what you're planning is super helpful for the children and the other beneficiaries to get an idea and have some understanding before the incident of your death happens. And that just gives a little bit more clarity for the family once you're gone, because they knew what you wanted. They resolved any conflict while you're alive, hopefully, and they have more peace knowing that they're following your wishes. Some family members or some parents aren't comfortable talking to their kids before death. And so in that case, I think it's really important to at least write a letter explaining your wishes and explaining the reasons why you did certain things.
That's very helpful. Jenna, now that you've experienced so many clients, you help them navigate through the hardest change in their life, and their life changes forever. What have you learned about, and what's been your perspective shift on the living, like when we're living, because you probably experience people talking about regrets and family issues and all the stuff. So give us some insight because you see people up close and personal in the most vulnerable states.
One insight is that family is the most important thing to most people. They could be successful in their careers and other areas of their life, but really what they cherish most dearly is family. So to build those relationships and make them strong during life is the ultimate goal of a lot of people. Doing that is hard work. Lots of families I've worked with are, they do have dysfunction. I think it's a natural occurrence with a lot of families, and just knowing what your family might need and giving them the knowledge, the education, and also the ability to ask questions is really good. And so in terms of living, lots of people don't like planning for their deaths or planning for their wills. And it's on their mind. It's this task that they've been putting off and off and off. And they think about it and they get sick to their stomach because they haven't done it. I'd say just get it done. Then you can live your life. You don't have to think about it for a few years, or at least until a big significant change happens. Because why would you spend all this time thinking about something that literally will take, 5 to 10 hours of your life to do it right, and maybe a couple grand, when you could just be enjoying your life and not thinking about this task that you haven't done in the event of your death.
So true, Rose. I am in. I'm in. You sold
Good.
me. You sold me on everything that's on my to-do list that I've been thinking about doing and not doing. So thank you for that. You mentioned about family dysfunction, and I remember this concept of normalcy. I think it's normal to have dysfunction in families. Every family has dysfunction. And I remember I did a coaching session and I talked about, life. And I said, is this normal? And my coach said, there is no normal. And I was like, what? Like, there's no normal? What do you mean? And it was like this huge, there's no normal in business. There's no normal in relationships. There's no normal in finances. There's no normal in, your death wishes. That there are some things that you can tend to, but the idea of normal, like, am I normal? Is this normal? And I say yes, like, we are all normal because there's no like normalcy, right? Like, it's
Right.
all in comparison to something else. And in my keynote, I talk about we all have these fears and we wonder if it's normal. You are normal. If we just understand that we are normal, then, we can kind of move forward into face the fears, into embracing our courage, and into developing our confidence. Talk to me about how you would define courage.
Great question. I believe courage is stepping out of your comfort zone and doing something that scares you. I think everyone feels scared with a lot of things, but doing things anyways is super important and fulfilling. So that's what I believe courage is. And actually, that was one of my New Year's resolutions, is to do things that scare me this year. So I got to pick something every month. You can help me with this to push myself, because if you're not pushing yourself, you don't build those new skills and take on the new risks. So just as a side, I if any of our listeners, if you have ideas, go skydiving, bungee jumping, I'm in. Okay, I'm in.
I did go skydiving once in my life, and it was crazy. I remember, like, the moment jumping out. I was in the Swiss Alps with this random girl that I met in a hostel, and we have like we're going tandem with a dive person, a jump person, and he's like, "Okay, are you ready?" I'm like, "No, I don't think I'm ready. I don't think I can go." And I like look down and I have all this fear. He's like, "Okay, on the count of 3." And like the second you go, you are so scared. Like, I had a huge free fall. I can't remember how many feet it was, but it was crazy. And my cheeks were going like crazy. In the moment of fear, I felt so alive too.
Yes.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so free. Like, this is crazy. And I will remember that. Like, I did it when I was 21. And that moment of like, are you ready? No, I'm not ready. You jump, you have fear. It's overwhelming, but it's so exciting.
So exciting. Moment. Isn't that a good vision or a good sight to think about when you're doing anything brave? Entrepreneurship, you're jumping out of a plane and you know that you have some support in place, but it's scary. So just that image in my mind, that's a really good symbol for a lot of things that we do in life.
And all my senses, I just remember my cheeks, and I had a video, like they gave, I paid the however much money to have this video. Your cheeks were crazy, and your senses are so heightened, right? When you're in a lot of fear, like, everything is heightened. And then you come down to the ground and you go, wow, like, what else can I do? And the more the more we embrace courage, the more we realize how capable we truly are. So I love that. Jenna, where can people find you? I mean, your service is so helpful. It's brilliant. You've identified a niche, you've identified a need, and you serve people. So where can people find you and get all your details if they want to work with you?
Absolutely. So you can reach me online at guardianestate.ca. Nice and simple. Happy to answer any questions and talk to anyone who's interested.
Amazing. Any other feedback or suggestions for anybody that wants to make a big freaking change in their life?
This actually was one of my previous boss's recommendations, is to always bet on yourself. Always bet on yourself when you're faced with a decision. So if that helps any listeners out there, then that's great.
That is good. Always bet on yourself, because it's the one thing we can influence, we can control, we can decide, and there's really nothing else that we don't really get that full autonomy to do, right? So that's beautiful. Jenna, thank you so much for being on our show. Thank you for shedding light on a hard thing in life, the death, the known, the unavoidable, and to get all of us in gear to prepare for that is a great reminder for all of our listeners. And thank you for sharing your entrepreneurial journey with us. It's never smooth and easy, but it's in the endurance that allows us to succeed. And I know you're going to be a brilliant success. I always say, we always joke around, if we had her braids and my fire, like, we could do anything, because I'm highly motivated and like, just go. And my sister, gets stuck sometimes overthinking, like most people. And we want perfection. We strive. We procrastinate, and it's a cycle of, I believe it's the same. Procrastination and perfection are both sides of the same coin, because you strive to have things perfect before you launch, and you procrastinate making hard decisions or taking action because we want an ideal situation. So you're living proof of, overcoming that and betting on yourself and making an impact. So for all our listeners, I want you to think about the big freaking change that you can step into, and by taking one step at a time, flexing your courage muscle, betting on yourself, and making your dreams come true, because nobody wants to live with regret. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye for now.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and would be so grateful if you could share it with someone else that could benefit from it. Let's remember to change our relationship to change itself, and take aligned action. If we want to make meaningful changes in our lives, we need to embrace stepping into the next version of ourselves in the process. Remember, stop waiting to feel ready and start taking action today.